In SharePoint, features reduce the complexity involved in making simple site customizations and are also robust when upgrades are applied to a deployment. Really, for developers, features are considered the primary deployment unit for SharePoint. So anything that you do should be wrapped into a feature. And then in turn, those features are going to get wrapped into a solution. With features, you can target everything from as high as the farm level, down to a web application, to a site collection, and then even at the probably the most common is at the web level. Probably the site collection and web level, those are definitely the most common where you are going to be targeting your features to. They are defined using XML. One of the really nice things about features in SharePoint is it makes it really easy to either activate or deactivate functionality in the course of a deployment. So administrator can easily transform the template or a definition of a site by just turning a feature on and off. So for example, maybe there's a feature that adds a certain type of a list to a website, and when you need that, maybe most sites don't need that, but for maybe some sites in your site collection that do need that particular list, all they have to do is turn that feature on, and all of a sudden that list will show up in their site. Some other nice things about features is, besides being defined in XML, which allows them to be very descriptive, they have some hooks, some architectural hooks where you can execute .NET code. So those hooks are when the feature is being installed, activated, deactivated, and uninstalled. The most typical or the most common ones that you'll see or you'll probably use are the when the feature is being activated or when it's being deactivated. So for example, if you have a feature that is going to provision a list, possibly you're just provisioning that list through code using the object model, then you would have that code in your activation in the activate event, and then maybe when you turn the feature off, you don't want that list to be in your site anymore at all, and so maybe that list gets deleted or hidden. So that code you would put in the deactivate. And they also have support for upgrade. So that could be both declaratively, so you can do upgrades in your declarative XML and then also in your code. So you might be asking yourself, well, what can I do with features? What are the capabilities of features? And at first, when you look at it, it seems the word feature seems kind of generic, but really there's a pretty broad range of functionality that you can't really come up with a better term. Features can do everything from installing files, they can modify UI elements, you can actually define site elements and provision them, so things like site columns, content types, lists. You can create workflows from a feature, you can apply properties. Pretty much everything you see and don't see can be done in a feature. Anytime you need any kind of custom code that's maybe just needs to be run one time, that's a good place to put that, is in a feature. And the place where features are stored at in SharePoint is in the root, in that 15 hive, under 15 template features. And each feature, the way they're organized is the name of the feature is the name of the subfolder underneath the features folder. And each one of those is going to have its own feature.xml file. It has to be named feature.xml, otherwise this won't work. So this is kind of like convention over configuration, I guess you would say. So the feature name, when you go to activate a feature, it's going to look for the name of the feature, it's going to find that folder, then it finds the folder, then it's going to look for the feature.xml file. And then inside features, the schema for a feature will allow you to have feature elements. So for feature elements, you could have things like maybe you're going to provision a file. Those files are always named elements.xml. and you can have 0 more files that are used by the feature. So what we're going to look at now in this demo is some of the features that are in the 15 template, and we're just going to open up one and just crack open the sample feature.xml file and just see what's inside of it. Okay, so we're in the 15 Hive right now. We're in the template folder, and I'm going to drill down into the features folder. And these are all the features that are installed in this version of SharePoint. I believe this is the enterprise version for SharePoint 2013. So there's lots of features in here with the enterprise version. But I'm going to come down to the fields feature. And I'm going to open up feature.xml file. And we'll open it in Visual Studio just so we can get the color coding. And notice here, here's the ID of the feature. So this is the globally unique identifier for the feature. And the title, this is what shows up in the UI. So if I go into the UI, I'm going to go into Site Settings, and I'll just go Site Administration. Actually, we'll go Site Collection. Go Site Collection Features. That title is what shows up here in this text right here, and then this text right here is what's showing up in the description. So this description right here is what's showing up there, and then here's our version of the feature, and then some features that you have can be hidden so they won't show up in the UI. And then here's where we have our scope, so we can say if it's, in this case, this is scoped at the site collection level, so we say site for site collection, and then it could be web, or it could be web application or farm. And then this one has 4 element manifest files. And so if we open up the manifest files, we can just open one of them. In this case, it's going to, they all have the element, and then in this case, it's provisioning these fields. And so these are some fields that are used throughout all of SharePoint. And you can see we can reduce some of these. There's just a whole bunch of fields in here that are being provisioned. And so each one of these manifest files, you'll see they represent these files here. They all match up identically. So the feature is basically a manifest. And then this is the manifest for all those element files that we just looked at, those XML files. And then down here we have the upgrade actions. So this one is ending with version 12.1. This is 14.0, so that's SharePoint 2010. And then this is SharePoint 2013. So the very first time this feature is going to get deployed, all 3 of these upgrade actions will apply for a freshly provisioned site collection. But let's say, for example, if you're upgrading the feature, if the old version is less than 12.1, then SharePoint is only going to activate this one and this one, field WSS2 and field WSS3. But if the current version is greater than 12.1, less than 14.0, then SharePoint will only activate fields WSS3. And then we can go back and we can look at fields WSS2. And you can see it only has one field in it. And the root is again, it's an elements that is identifying what lets this know that this is an elements file, and then as part of an element manifest. So it's just provisioning one single site column here as well. And something else that you might notice is that it's using resources for the display name. And so what that means is instead of hard coding the titles that show up in the UI, or the descriptions that show up in the UI, it's using a resource file. So it's actually language dependent. So that's a best practice for if you're developing features that are going to be deployed in multiple languages, then you want them to show up in each language that's being used for that server. So the format of the feature.xml file is it must conform to an XSD schema, and that resides in the SharePoint root at the template/xml/wss.xsd is the file. And the root element is the feature element. And so it has two fields, two attributes that are required. The ID attribute, which is that globally unique identifier, or GUID, that's identifying the feature. And then the scope, which is going to be either a farm, web application site, or a web. So looking at the scope attribute, it tells us that features aren't just for individual site elements, but can also provide functionality for either, it could be an entire web application or a farm. So for example, the site settings feature has a farm scope and specifies the default contents of every site settings page for every site that uses the custom action feature element. The feature element also supports a number of other optional attributes. So the title, which we looked at, and the description, which we were just looking at as well, and whether or not it's hidden. So if it's hidden equals true, it's not going to show up in the UI. And there are several more. So within the feature element itself, the root element, there's also another element called activation dependencies. So activation dependencies allow you to specify features to activate when a feature is activated. So you can make your feature depend on another feature. Or not just that, but you could actually, when your feature activates, it's automatically going to activate another feature. A lot of times those dependent features will be hidden. They don't have to be, though. So sometimes a common technique would be if you have a feature that has a lot of activation dependencies, you can have one feature visible that has the title and description information for the whole package and won't have any implementation other than implementing all those other activation dependencies. And so, and all those features that are being activated by the parent will include that hidden equals true attribute. And as we were seeing before, there's the element manifests, and then it can contain element files within the element manifest element. There's also a properties element, and so that allows you to have some default values, kind of like a little custom dictionary. So you can have key value pairs that you can put in there. And then there's also the upgrade actions, which tell SharePoint what to do when your feature is being upgraded. And these are declarative. So web solution packages are the most robust and manageable way to install and manage features. They're complex when you compare it to the alternative, which is just to copy the files and install the features by using either PowerShell, or you could use STS-ADM from the command line. However, that is being phased out. So best practice is to use PowerShell. We're not going to focus on web solution packages right now, but we're going to just focus on features. But once you start doing real development, you should be using packages with features that contain features. And one good thing about Visual Studio 2012 is that it has very good support for configuring features. Now there's different ways to activate features, different ways to install them. So we just talked about the solution package. We talked about using PowerShell or STS-ADM. To activate features, you can also do it through the UI or the command line. So through the UI, the example I just showed where I went into site settings and I looked at the site collection features, and there's a little toggle button in there to either enable or actually activate or deactivate those features. And then we can do the same thing through the command line. In this case, I'm using the enable-sp feature PowerShell command. So in this demo, we're actually going to build a feature, and we're going to deploy it manually, not in a solution package, but we'll just deploy it manually using PowerShell command. Okay, I'm going to open up Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm just going to make a class library for demo purposes, and I'll call it deploy file demo. Go ahead and create that. And we don't need this class, so I'm going to delete that. I don't really need Visual Studio for this, but I'm just using it because it has a great editor. So I'm going to add an item, and I'm going to pick an XML file. And I'm going to name it feature. Since Visual Studio's XML editor supports IntelliSense whenever schema is available, I'm going to go ahead and use that. And in this case, it's already got the right schemas associated with it, because the schema I'm interested in is the WSS.XSD. Just want to make sure that that's checked off. So let me scroll. I'm going to scroll to the right. Oops. Let's make this bigger so it's easier to see. Okay. So in this case, WSS.XSD is checked off, so that's good. We don't need to edit that. That's going to give me the IntelliSense that I need. So now I can start typing in my feature element, and I get my IntelliSense. So the first thing I got to do when I'm creating a feature is I got to give it an ID. And that has to be a GUID, or globally unique identifier. So I'm going to use the create GUID tool. And I'm going to go ahead and pick the registry format. I'm going to click new GUID, copy, exit, and then I'm going to Control V, paste that in. And I'm going to get rid of the curly braces because I don't need those. Then I'm going to give a scope to it. I'm going to scope this down to the web level. And let's give it a title. We'll call it My Demo Feature. Okay. So what I just typed in there, that's going to cause this feature to appear on the Manage Site Features page, and you'll see the title My Demo Feature after this feature is installed. Now in this case, I want to have an element manifest in the feature, so I'm going to type in element manifests, and I'm going to put in an element manifest. And the location is going to be elements.xml. I'm going to save that, Control S. Now I'm going to add a new item to the project. And I'm going to select XML file again. I'm going to rename it to elements because that's what we defined. And I'll go ahead and give that the elements element. And what we want to do in this particular case is we're going to provision a file into the documents library. So I'm going to call it, I'm going to use a module. Module is the element you use to provision files in SharePoint features. So name, we'll call it deploy. That's the name of the module. URL, it's going to be documents. Actually, shared documents. Spell that correctly. And you can put one or more files in a module. The most you can put is 1,000 files is the max you can put in there, but we're going to put just one. So we're going to declare our file element URL. It's relative, so we'll call it sample. Sample.txt is just a text file. And type we'll say is Ghostable and library. And that indicates whether or not the file is going to be an item in the library when the feature is activated, as opposed to just being placed in the site at that specified URL. Save that off again. Now I'm going to add that file. So we'll just add a text file. Oops. Need to rename that. Sample. Double check that. That's what we called it. Sample.text. So let's make it case sensitive. This shouldn't matter, but I like to keep everything the same. And we'll just say just give some content. It doesn't really matter what's in there. The whole idea is to provision this file into our shared documents library. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up 15 Hive. I'm going to go to Template, Features. I'm going to open up the Features folder. And I'm going to create a new folder. And we'll call it Deploy File Demo. And I'll take these files that we just created here, open these up, and just copy them in. So we'll copy them into the 15 Hive under Features, Deploy File Demo. And now I'm going to open up SharePoint 2013 PowerShell, the management shell that has all the SharePoint commandlets that I need. And we're going to install the feature. So we'll type install sp feature, that is the name of the commandlet that we need, and then tell it the path, which is, the path is the folder name that we gave it, so we'll call it deploy file demo and hit return. And it's been deployed. So now, close that. Now I'm going to go into the team site. So we'll navigate to Site Actions, Manage Site Features, and we should see our feature, and here it is, my demo feature. So we installed it, we didn't activate it yet, so now we're going to activate the feature. We'll click here, so that activated it. So now let's check our documents. We were provisioning that file, sample.txt, into, and that sample.txt just says hello from sample file, so into the documents library, shared documents library. So if I go in here, we look, and sure enough, here it is. Click on it, make sure it's the same one, and sure enough it is.